Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep on this Titan submersible story. You know, the one
Yeah.
it imploded back in June while going to see the Titanic wreckage.
Huge story.
And you guys sent us so much on it. Articles, court documents, even some firsthand accounts.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like we have all these puzzle pieces,
Right.
and we're going to see if we can put them all together, figure out what happened.
It really did grab the world's attention, didn't it? And
Yeah.
not just because of the Titanic. I mean,
Okay.
it raised so many questions about where's the line between innovation and safety,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Especially with these companies that are pushing the limits into this, exploration and all that.
Exactly. So let's start with the company behind all this.
Okay.
OceanGate.
Yeah.
They were paying customers to these amazing deep-sea places, right?
Yeah, that's right. OceanGate was founded back in 2009.
Okay.
They leased and even built their own submersibles, and they were really focused on shipwrecks.
Yeah.
Especially the Titanic. I mean, that was their main attraction.
Oh.
I mean, there's just something about that ship that just, keeps fascinating people. And OceanGate, they knew that.
You can't help but be drawn into that story, but it seems like that focus on the Titanic
Yeah.
maybe clouded some judgment when it came to safety.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the submersible itself,
Yeah.
the Titan, it was pretty unique.
Okay.
5-person vessel made of carbon fiber and titanium, built to handle that immense pressure at those depths.
Okay, but here's where I get a little confused.
Yeah.
I read that they used like a modified Logitech game controller
Oh, yeah.
to steer the Titan A game controller.
Yeah.
For something going to the Titanic. I'm not an engineer or anything, but that just sounds...
It does raise eyebrows, doesn't it? Especially when
Yeah.
you think about how OceanGate was claiming they were working with, NASA, Boeing,
Yeah.
the University of Washington.
But I remember reading that all those places, they kind of distanced themselves
Yeah.
pretty quickly after everything happened.
Yeah, they said their involvement was pretty limited, mostly in the early stages. Oh, okay.
Nothing to do with the final design, the
Oh.
engineering, the testing, any of that.
Makes you wonder then, right?
Yeah.
If these big names weren't involved later on, what kind of oversight was there?
That is the question. And this kind of leads us to the most important part of this whole deep dive.
Okay.
The safety concerns.
Right.
There were some serious warnings, some very specific ones too, way before the 2023 expedition.
Yeah, like from David Lockridge, he was their director of marine operations. He seemed to be raising all sorts of red flags.
He was really concerned about the Titan's safety. He questioned the viewport's depth rating,
Okay.
whether the hull was tested properly, and the limits of their real-time monitoring system, the RTM.
Wait, hold on. I'm not an engineer.
Sure.
What exactly is an RTM?
Think of it like the warning lights on your car's dashboard, but for a submersible.
Okay.
It's supposed to alert the crew if there's a problem with the hull, the batteries,
Yeah.
anything really important.
Got it. So Lockridge was basically saying he didn't think that window could handle the pressure. The viewport. Yeah.
And that the system might not catch a problem in time to
Right.
stop a disaster.
Exactly. He was especially worried about the viewport because that's how the passengers would see the Titanic
Right.
if that failed at that depth.
Yeah.
Not good.
So what did OceanGate do when he brought this up? I took his recommendation seriously, right?
Oh, no. Unfortunately, they fired him and sued him for breach of confidentiality.
Are you serious? They fired him
Yeah.
because he was worried about safety.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
And this wasn't the only time.
Oh, wow.
As we go through all this information, you'll see OceanGate had a habit of ignoring anyone who questioned them.
Okay, so red flag number one.
Yeah?
Didn't a group of experts also send a letter expressing their concerns?
They drafted one, but Stockton Rush, the CEO,
Right.
he refused to even receive it. He was convinced that regulations were just stifling innovation.
Okay.
Sounds like his desire to push the limits maybe overshadowed, the whole safety thing.
And then there's that Boeing engineer, Mark Negley.
Right.
He also warned Rush directly about the hull failing.
Yes. Negley was very clear in his warning.
Yeah.
But it seems like they ignored him, too. And it wasn't just him. Rob McCallum, a deep-sea exploration expert, he also warned Rush against doing these commercial trips without proper testing and, classification.
So multiple experts from different parts of the field,
Yeah.
all raising the same red flags,
Uh-huh.
but OceanGate just wasn't listening.
It seems that way. What were they thinking? It's hard to say for sure, but it seems like they didn't want anyone looking over their shoulder.
Wow.
They even threatened McCallum with a lawsuit because he spoke up.
Seriously.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how many warning signs there were.
Yeah.
And then there's Ross Kemp, the filmmaker.
Right.
He was going to do a whole series about the Titanic with OceanGate.
Yeah.
but he canceled his dive.
Really?
Yeah, his production company thought it was too risky. If a film crew is backing out, that should tell you something.
Yeah, I mean, you have all these warnings, these incidents, these near misses.
It all paints a pretty scary picture, looking back.
Hmm.
They were really taking some big risks, it seems like.
Yeah, it's like a textbook example of how not to deal with risk.
Right.
But it wasn't just warnings,
Right.
There were actual incidents, things that really should have made them stop and think, Like reconsider everything.
You're talking about things like that 2021 thing when the hull cracked.
Yeah, after all those dives,
Yeah.
that was a big one. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Or disturbing, depending on how you see it.
Uh-huh.
So when they built the replacement hull,
Right.
Stockton Rush insisted on reusing some parts from the old one.
Wait, so they took a hull that already cracked under pressure
Yeah.
and used parts from that
Yeah.
for the new one,
Yeah.
even though engineers told them not to.
That seems to be what happened. They also added those lifting rings
Okay.
against what engineers recommended.
Wow.
It feels like maybe they were trying to save money and keep to their schedule.
Boy.
That maybe that was more important than, actually making sure it was strong enough.
Yeah, it's like a pattern.
Yeah.
Ignoring the experts, putting speed over safety.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. Remember David Pogue's dive in 2022?
Yeah.
The Titan got lost? Couldn't even find the Titanic?
Right.
Pogue even said the submersible felt MacGyver-like.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny at the time,
Yeah.
in a nervous way, but now it's just scary.
Right. Like, it's a reminder that sometimes things that seem quirky or, a little off
Yeah.
can actually mean there are bigger problems. And Pogue wasn't the only one who had issues with the Titan. There was that time when a thruster was put in backward.
Wait, seriously? Backwards?
Yeah, it seems like it was just a mistake, but it meant the pilot had to steer sideways,
Wow.
using that game controller to make up for it.
Okay, this is getting a bit much.
Yeah.
A backward thruster, a hull made with old parts,
Yeah.
and they ignored all those warnings. It's hard to believe this was all happening with the submersible going so deep.
Right. And it gets worse. In another 2022 dive, they had battery issues,
Okay.
and it damaged the sub when they were attaching it to the platform.
You'd think that would be enough
Yeah.
for them to say, okay, let's figure out what's going on.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But here's the crazy part.
Okay.
Their own monitoring system, the RTM.
Right, the one Lockridge warned about.
Yeah, it showed the hull had shifted permanently after that battery incident.
So even their own system,
Yeah.
the one they were relying on for safety,
Right.
was telling them there was damage. And they still went ahead with the 2023 trip.
It seems like they thought the data was wrong.
Right.
That the hull was fine. But as we know, that was a big mistake.
Yeah, the 2023 expedition,
Right.
the one that ended in tragedy. Let's talk about that.
Mhm.
It sounds like it was a challenge just getting started.
It was. They had to delay the start a few times because of the weather.
Okay.
And then finally, on June 18th, the Titan went under.
Right.
And they lost contact just an hour and a half later. The last message they sent was nothing special. They just said they had dropped 2 rets.
Okay.
We think that meant they were dropping weights as part of going down,
So no sign of trouble, no mayday, nothing.
Nope. Everything seemed normal. They probably had no idea what was about to happen.
It's so sad to think about it.
Yeah.
They thought everything was fine and then
Yeah.
disaster.
We know now that the U.S. Navy, they picked up on something that sounded like an implosion
Wow.
right after the Titan went quiet.
Really?
But they didn't tell anyone at first.
So while everyone's watching this huge search and rescue effort, hoping for a miracle,
Yeah.
it seems like they already knew what happened.
It's tough to think about, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine how hard it must have been for the families
Yeah.
holding on to hope when the odds were so bad.
Yeah, and those underwater sounds they heard?
Right.
Sadly, those weren't from the Titan.
Oh, wow.
Turned out to be something else entirely. Another blow for those hoping for a rescue. Eventually, they found the debris field with a remotely operated vehicle, the Odysseus 6K,
Right.
and that confirmed the implosion. 5 lives lost.
Yeah. Stockton Rush, the CEO, Paul-Henri Nargeolet, the French explorer.
Yeah, he had spent his life studying the Titanic.
It's just awful.
It's a stark reminder, that exploration,
Yeah.
while it's amazing and important,
Right.
it can be incredibly dangerous. And that safety, it has to come first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So after everything happened,
Yeah.
there were investigations launched by different countries.
Right. The U.S. Coast Guard, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada,
Yeah.
agencies from France and the UK. What were they hoping to find out? What were the big questions? Well, mainly they wanted to know what caused the implosion,
Yeah.
to understand exactly what went wrong and why.
Okay.
There were also questions about those waivers. OceanGate made everyone sign.
Right.
Did the passengers really understand the risks? Were those waivers even legal?
Because basically they were signing away their right to sue.
Exactly, no matter what happened.
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue. But the investigations weren't just about technical stuff and legal stuff.
Right.
They also had to look at the human side of things.
Right.
What was going on at OceanGate?
Yeah.
Was there a culture of taking risks that led to this?
And the financial side of things.
Right.
The search and rescue cost millions.
Yeah.
And that started a debate about whether the public should pay for these risky ventures.
Especially when it involves, wealthy people.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It is. On the one hand, you could say that when lives are at stake, costs shouldn't matter.
Right.
But then there's the question of who's responsible.
Right.
Should taxpayers have to pay for rescues when the people involved knew the risks?
Yeah. It's a tough one. And then there's how everyone reacted on social media.
Yeah, this was a global story.
Right. Everyone was watching.
And the reactions were all over the place, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sadness, of course, but also a lot of people criticizing OceanGate.
Yeah.
Some felt they'd been reckless, put profit and attention ahead of safety.
And then there were the memes and jokes, which
Yeah.
some people found insensitive. But maybe it was a way to cope,
It's hard to know how to react to something like this.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about how we process these events.
Especially now with social media.
Right.
Everyone can share their thoughts right away, whether they really know what they're talking about or not.
One thing that struck me was the comparison some people made between the Titan and that migrant boat that sank around the same time.
Yeah.
Hundreds died in that one, but it didn't get nearly as much attention as the Titan. Why do you think that is?
That's a tough question. I'm not sure there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
Maybe it's partly the Titanic connection. The Titan story was already dramatic. It was tied to this famous disaster.
Right.
But it also makes you think about how we value different lives.
Yeah.
And how that shows up in the media. It's something to think about.
It is. This whole deep dive into the Titan tragedy.
Yeah.
It's revealed so much more than just what happened technically.
It really has. It's forced us to look at things like accountability,
Yeah.
risk management, even our own biases.
So what have we learned from all this? What are the key takeaways?
I think the most important thing is that safety can't be compromised even when you're exploring and innovating,
Right.
cutting corners, ignoring experts, pushing the limits without proper testing.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for disaster.
And it seems like this tragedy also showed that we need stricter rules,
Yeah.
especially for these experimental technologies like submersibles.
Especially when you're paying passengers to such dangerous places.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like there's this balance between encouraging innovation and keeping people safe.
Right.
And in this case, it seems like they went too far with the innovation.
It seems that way. We have to learn from this, make sure it never happens again.
Absolutely. We'll keep you updated on the investigations and let you know if anything big comes up.
Yeah. In the meantime, there's a lot to consider here. The Titan tragedy wasn't just one event, It was a bunch of decisions, a culture of risk-taking,
Yeah.
maybe even some arrogance. It's a cautionary tale.
It really is. Thanks for helping us unpack all this.
You're welcome.
And to you, our listener, thanks for taking this deep dive with us. It's heavy stuff.
It is.
But it's important to learn from these tragedies and keep asking the hard questions.
It's funny. When this all first happened, I think a lot of us were just caught up in the adventure of it all, The Titanic, a submersible. It felt like a movie or something.
It's easy to get swept up in that whole exploration thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But as we've seen, there's a darker side to it.
Right.
The side with risk and responsibility and, the consequences when you push too far.
Absolutely. And I think this deep dive has really shown that, it's not just about the technology or how exciting the discovery is. It's
Yeah.
about the people, the choices they make, the systems that are supposed to protect them.
Exactly. The Titan wasn't just a technical failure. It was a human one.
They didn't listen to warnings. They didn't prioritize safety. They didn't even acknowledge the limits of what they were doing.
So where do we go from here? What's next?
Yeah.
The investigations are still going on, but what are the big questions that still need answers?
Well, technically, we still don't know exactly what caused the implosion.
Right.
Was it the carbon fiber hull, like some people think?
Yeah.
Was it the viewport? Or was it a bunch of things together?
Yeah.
design flaws and mistakes all coming together.
And then there were the legal and ethical questions.
Right.
What'll happen with the lawsuits?
Yeah.
Will OceanGate be held responsible? What about those waivers?
Yeah. Will this change how liability works for this kind of extreme tourism?
It's a lot to think about. And then there's the big question,
Yeah.
how will this affect deep-sea exploration going forward?
Right. Will there be stricter rules for private submersibles? Will people be less interested in exploring the deep ocean?
I hope not. I mean, the ocean is still this vast, mysterious place. So much to discover. But we have to be smart about it, right?
Absolutely.
We can't let this tragedy be for nothing.
We have to learn from it. Exploration and discovery, they're a part of who we are.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that we need to protect ourselves and the places we explore.
Well said. This has been a tough deep dive,
It has.
but an important one. It's made us face some hard truths about ourselves.
Yeah.
And how far we're willing to go.
But I think there's hope, too.
Yeah.
We can learn from this. We can find ways to innovate and stay safe and keep exploring our world with a sense of wonder, but also with wisdom.
To you, our listener, I hope this deep dive gave you some new perspectives on the Titan tragedy. It's complicated with so many layers,
It is.
and we'll keep digging as we learn more. Thanks for being here with us.